This Choircast podcast brought to you by Bros, Bibles, and Beer. You know the conversations that you have with the guys, you have the debates, things go sideways, and then you end up laughing so hard it hurts?
Yeah, now imagine those conversations with actually digging into the big questions.
Zach, do you even like the Bible?
I do, Andy. I just am not sure if God wrote it.
That's blasphemy of the
How
Holy
many
Spirit.
beers have you had?
Bros, Bibles, and Beer. Serious conversations on faith and culture without taking ourselves too seriously. New episodes every week.
Hey, it's me.
She's a former mayor. They're a former evangelical pastor with dissociative identity disorder. These two like to talk about the topics you're not supposed to talk about. They might cause you to perspire just a bit, but they'll definitely make you inspired. Let's talk religion and politics, and what spirituality and emotional well-being look like in a post-evangelical world. This is Paul and Ashley on Evangelical-ish.
Yay! It's Wednesday. Here we are.
Hello. It's our favorite time of the week and our favorite topic, religion and politics.
Hey, we ended up we're on the opposite sides of the screen from where we normally are.
Hold on. I'm left of you right now. That's insane. That never happens.
Yeah.
Like,
Crazy.
is it a metaphor for life? I think not.
That you're moving left of me?
I'm not left of you, I would say.
I went to one of those little meetings in front of one of those little car lots where they have those little stainless steel pickup trucks for sale for douchebags to buy to try to prove they have big enough appendages. If you can interpret all of that.
I can. I'm curious why you're coding your language.
Because we don't know
Are you
who's
afraid
listening
the
in, and
Gestapo
they're
is
like,
listening? Yeah.
in some ways, I'm sort of joking about that, but like
Mhm. But
there
kind of
are
also.
there are
Yeah.
threats to like make protesting a terrorist act in America. So it may not totally. There may be a time where going out to something like that, you have to wear a mask and not put something on Facebook. And in some states they're making wearing a mask illegal for that exact reason. So yeah.
Well, let's just say we know plenty of people who have been arrested for peaceful protests in their careers and in their lives, and it's not the end of the world. It's not something that I would
Yeah.
cherish or want to do. But if I ever felt like, you know what, it's time just to stand on the front line and say, like, no, I support democracy. And if it means I get arrested, I get arrested.
Well, this Columbia student here on a student visa, green card, excuse me, on a green card, a permanent resident, and they, what's it called, disappeared him? Is that the word?
Yeah, right.
Like his wife and lawyer didn't know where he was for like 3 days. That's not America.
That is, oh my goodness gracious. Let's just say this. At the end of this whole situation, this man has such an incredibly huge lawsuit on his hands against the federal government, and he will
I
win.
hope so.
It will take years, and this is the problem. And I'm sure he would say, not worth it. I'd rather not have gone through it. But he's going to have a big old lawsuit on his hands.
And this thing with the gang members, and for those of you who aren't watching us on YouTube, I'm using my finger quotes, gang members, and they may be gang members. Actually, being a gang member isn't illegal in the United States. I don't think you can be arrested for the anticipation that you might commit a crime, and certainly not without due process. And to take these men to a country that they're not from, if they had sent them back to Venezuela's saying they won't take them, but that would be one thing. But to send them to another country that they're not from without due process, and probably sent the planes off despite a judge saying don't do it. It just is stunning to me that MAGA people who claim to be patriotic and ultra constitutionalists are just sitting there going, yeah, great, I'm glad we did that, is beyond me, just beyond me. Like, we should be hitting the streets saying, no, nobody, whether I like them or don't like them, should ever be arrested in the United States without warrant, due process. You know, we did this before. We put citizens into concentration camps like right around the corner from where we live here, and we should never ever say that's okay ever again.
Yeah. I would say this, that I don't think I'm hyperventilating fearful as much as I have been in the last 6 weeks. I think I've kind of moved through that phase. And I think with
Yeah.
enough news coverage and like it's causing so much national conversation around like, oh, this era, there's a little bit like we have been through this before. Certainly not in our lifetimes, but there is this like repeating pattern like every 50 to 100 years, like, and I'm just wondering, is this like hopefully the final belch of this sort of thing, or is it the belch that's needed? And it's probably more than that, but for 100 years, I like, there's just a lot of like, yeah, we've done this. We have this in us as a people and as a country, and the world certainly does. And it's like so it's almost like I think I'm through the shock of it all. And now I'm just like, okay, then therefore, what have past generations done to stand up for and choose a different way forward? Okay, like we just have to be ready to do that.
Yeah, and I hope you're right, and I love that. I think I realized today I've been in mourning. I think it's awfully dangerous to keep depending on, well, this has come on before and we got through it. Because there's, the one time you can only not get through it once,
Right.
and you never get to
Right.
go back ever
Right.
again,
Right.
I think even just going out to the Tesla thing was just a moment of like, okay, I got to start at least putting a foot in front of another. I'll probably talk about this more in a video later. Jon Stewart did an interview with Senator Chris Murphy, from a Democrat from New York, and I even thought John could have pushed farther, but it was really good. And I thought he made the point really well that, hey, Dems, you guys are better than those guys, but not so much better that you can sit here and say, we're absolved of blamed in all of this.
Yeah.
And so Stewart was just really pressing Murphy on, but what's the plan? And Murphy, who is way better than where Chuck Schumer is, for sure, was like, well, we just have to tell people, that we're the party of the people. We always have been. And Stewart was like, no. How about what's the plan? Like, what are you going to do?
Right. Exactly.
What are you going to do?
Frustrating.
Like, we should, and he's talking about corporate money and stuff. And like, so don't take corporate money. Like, say, when we get in, we're going to end this process of corporate money. We're going to give health care to everyone. We're going to, maybe call it something. And Stewart's like, let's give it a name. Let's see, what could we think? How about like project something? Like, let's put together a plan and say, vote for us. This is the radical shit we're going to do when we get in there. Instead of like, hey, we'll get in and then we won't do anything we tell you, and we'll just breathe a sigh of relief that we survived Trump again.
That guy. Yeah. Right.
And I thought that was really brilliant.
Let me say that. Okay, so last night over a glass of wine with our friend Liz Erickson, who was on the show with us,
great guest,
towards the election last November. I was about a glass and a half in, so I was extra brilliant and extra poetic. This is what I found myself saying. The political system will not fix this. It will not fix it. The only fix is that individual people in individual like neighborhoods and in our own inner work and evaluation of what is important to you and what is life and what is the society we want to be a part of, enough individual people without coercion and influence from political parties who are both incapable of compelling anybody right now for anything except for MAGA stuff. We have to choose, regardless of my religious affiliation, regardless of my political affiliation, regardless of my day job. I choose democratic values. And that means I have value for somebody who may not agree with me. I expect my
And you're
community.
saying small d democratic values, not big D
Correct.
Democratic Party values.
Correct.
Yeah.
Pro-democracy. I choose it again. Maybe in my lifetime, democracy has not really worked, but it has over the course of history. We must choose it again. We don't believe in kings. We don't believe in dictators. Like, individual people need to decide this, and then individual people have to live out that commitment and that expression, irrespective of political contests. And that is part of what we're saying. We are seeing groundswells of people in town halls, average Americans, average residents showing up and saying, like, wait a second, this is not who we are. Like, that has to happen so much. That is the only thing that will maneuver and manipulate the political apparatus. I think in our lifetimes, there was enough people had made that decision and commitment, whether it was, to get through World War II or whatever, that like there were then, 50, 75 years of intention, spiritual commitment that enough people made, and political systems formed around it. Those political systems could compel a little bit, but it is no longer the thing that can bring people together. Only people can decide to do this. And then the politics have to wrap around that. And we all need to stop thinking that it's the Democrats' job to get us out of this. It's not going to happen. So anyway, I say that as imagine there, like the process you go through in any given day. Like, how do you choose, like, where to find hope, what to see, what to value? Like there are 300 plus million people that, like, tens of millions of people can make this choice and decide they're going to be different. That's our saving grace.
If Jesus were in America today, what would he say about the right-wing evangelical church? Pastor Paul's new novel, Religious Right, Religiously Wrong, a modern-day parable, answers this question in a riveting story of a mysterious miracle-working stranger who upsets a conservative, evangelical town with his critique of their political views. Will the pastor and people of the local mega church listen? Or will the church crucify the messenger all over again? Religious Right, Religiously Wrong is the story America needs right now. James Fallows, writer for The Atlantic and former speechwriter for President Jimmy Carter, says Paul's book is very much worth reading and could not be more timely. Wayne Jacobson, co-author of the mega bestseller, The Shack, says this novel will confront fears and challenge the reader to a more excellent way of living and loving. Religious Right, Religiously Wrong, a modern-day parable, is available on Amazon or at our website evangelicalish.com.
Yeah. I've yet to kind of think about how do we change it without one of the parties helping, because our system is so rigged. But yeah.
I'm not saying parties are like you do have to use the levers of government, but I'm just saying there's sentiment, there's public sentiment, there's, if you wanted to put it in a spiritual or like a spiritual context, it would be like the heart attitude of the people. Enough people have to say, like, I don't give a damn about the politics of it. I'm going to choose this. And then those people will decide what lever do they want to pull. I mean, in our country's history, sometimes the political right has carried that heart attitude of collective and courage and value, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes it's the political left. I'm saying right now, just like, stop thinking it's going to be either obviously it's not going to be the right. Stop, let's make this decision. And then, we're going to have to use some political process to keep moving things forward at the community level, district level, whatever.
And we are going to get to our topic of the show. I think you're right. And I think one of the points Jon Stewart was making, I heard Bernie Sanders making this point the other day of the Dems have been trying to win elections, and that has to end. You have to
That is
start
it.
saying, what is good policy? What is good for the people? And just start doing that and arguing
Yeah.
that. And, right now, Bernie and AOC have huge crowds showing up wherever they go. Tim Walz is going
Great.
around having,
Great.
I
Do it.
heard Walz
Do
in
it.
an interview today, like he's going to districts where Republicans won't show up for their city hall meetings or their town hall
Yeah.
meetings,
Town
and
hall.
he'll hold town hall meetings in their districts.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's beautiful. That's really something. So I
Yeah.
think, those are the type of things, like what matters to people, and start doing that.
Oh my God. Like I feel like I could just like preach a sermon. I'm just what has to come up and out. And I don't care whose mouth it comes out of. I don't care what side of the aisle they're on. I don't care if they're independent or if they don't consider themselves political in any way. What has to come up and out to compel people is the pure sort of the bright light of care and concern for the whole thing working, and courage to make it happen, and courage to tell the truth. And I think any political actor right now that is like flowing with that, they're going to be successful. That's how political districts are turned. It's like somebody shows up that is actually the real deal, and like a whole lot of people can be the real deal. A whole lot of people. Like right now, if it's Bernie, fantastic. If it's AOC, great. If it's Joe Scarborough, terrific. Like whatever, just that spirit has to flow, and we just got to look for that spirit. And
last thing
choose it
I'll say on
ourselves.
this, and we do, Doug on the left here in the live chat is saying, I think the damage is already done. Why would any of our allies put trust as much in our nation as they had prior to Trump? And you and I were talking about this the other night, that maybe the U.S. stepping back and creating. And now what Trump's doing is nuts. I think he looks at the world as his big game of risk, and he's just like, I'm going to try this and see what I do that, and he doesn't even think about the fact that the lives of real people are being seriously impacted. But it may create a vacuum where Germany and France and England and India and some countries step up and do some things, and some things we may like and some things we may not like, but maybe we'll quit sucking all the oxygen out of the world and allow other countries to step up and do some things.
I definitely think that's the optimistic view of like, I think that's what's happening.
All right, let's get to our topic. You ready?
Well, I don't know. I'm still feeling really like hyped up on I'm feeling like I want to go like, conquer the world right now. Sorry. I have a lot of my endorphins.
Alex from Australia is asking if we're ready to hit the streets with mass protest.
I think it's the equivalent. Like if you look at I don't know if everyone knows this, but like I absolutely love Rachel Maddow. Like I watch the first half hour of every show. I think she's so smart, and I love her style, and I actually believe that we're best friends. She just doesn't know it. But anyway, the start of her show, every show, she's opening with, here's the evidence that individual people are saying, like, God damn it, no, that is not what I want in my community. Like the people who came out in support of the kebab lady in New Jersey, that's like, the white town mayor and the white state legislators, like, no, this lady's a pillar, get her out of your detention facility. Like she caps all that. If you kind of like, and it's happening in such low key, under the radar places, that is a sign of like real public sentiment. I think will there be a multi-million person march in the nation's capital? I definitely could see that happening.
Yeah.
Depending on kind of like, I don't know, that could happen. I could see that.
It could happen. I think it is important to look here in California. A Christian high school basketball coach, small things, agreed to play a basketball game against a school from San Francisco that had a player who was accused of being a trans woman or trans female. And several other school, I don't know, several, we know for sure one other school that's actually right from in our area had forfeited instead of playing against them. And so I don't know if I even told you, I did get an email back from that. The basketball coach is also the pastor of the school that takes on that is the sponsor of the school. And, and it was clearly it's a MAGA pastor, but, he said, hey, I think at some point we've got to display Jesus rather than something else.
That's so cool.
So, yeah, he said, I want to show that we love and care about people that we even disagree with, and we're going to play.
Powerful.
And I really appreciated that, even though I told him we probably disagree on 100 things, but I just want you to know this meant a lot to me that you played. Now, unfortunately, the player did not show up for the game.
I know. That's pretty sad. Don't you think that person was just like so harassed that probably
Absolutely.
afraid for their life?
I think they probably got death threats and all of the stuff that happens around these things, and probably was afraid to show up.
If you're that child's parent, you're like, that's it, you're not playing. Like that's so sad and scary.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Did you ask the pastor to come on the evangelical?
I actually did not, because I'm not sure
you
what
assumed
we would
a
get.
no.
No, I didn't assume a no. I just,
Okay.
like what we're going to talk about with my right-wing media interview here. I'm just trying to, and you're good at these things, and you probably would do a great job with that interview. I really have come away from this interview that we're going to talk about today. Like, how do we bridge the gap when we literally are coming from different planets, with some of these people? And
well,
it's,
but
to me, I made a video this week that it's like arguing pizza toppings with someone. And I'm like, no, it's okay to put pineapple on pizza, and knowing that a lot of people hate pineapple on pizza. And the other person I'm arguing with is like, no, pizza is nothing without human flesh on it, and it's like, wait, we're not coming from the same place here. We're not arguing two sides of the same coin, So
I think that's a good question. And people through the, eons have philosophers and such have tried to have framed up that dilemma. I think the reason to ask the question is and you don't know the answer, but you can just ask the other person, how, do you think this is bridgeable, or is the bridge only available if a person agrees with you? If that's the case, and can you acknowledge that if that is the only way you can have a conversation that you in fact cannot bridge, and if you cannot bridge, then what do you do?
Yeah.
And you can just talk about that. But anyway,
we can see. I actually do love having conversations with people who disagree with me, but you've got to have some frame of reference to be able to get to get somewhere in it,
Yeah, that's totally it. You have to think about what's the agenda and being forthright about that. Okay, so we are going to start today's show where we left off with last
we're already about
week.
halfway into the show, but that was good stuff.
So those of you who joined with us last week will recall that there was this very dramatic moment in Paul's life. Was it 2 weeks ago Monday? Okay.
Something like that.
I come home from work and Paul is white-faced.
Was I really white-faced? I didn't think
you were. You were like, you go, something happened today, and you were pale. I remember thinking that.
But this interview wasn't the only thing that happened, right? It was.
That is correct. But essentially, you walk into a podcast interview not knowing that this person's line of questioning was going to be all about, so I hear you're transitioning to be a woman. And
I thought it was going to be much more surfacey than that. Yeah.
Yes. And so you had to, in the moment, be like, whoa, what is this? Okay, what's happening? get your and the now your first clue should have probably been that this interview was happening in the like mega right wing radio station, AM radio station in our region.
Yeah.
But it's, I understand why you went into it. You're like, no, I'm just talking about my day job. And okay. Anyway, so it was a really significant conversation that you did not know you were going to have. You end up having it. It's so, I can feel how kind you are in this. And I think this person who interviewed you was trying to be as well. But it just kind of started to surface these gaps in awareness and sensitivities. And so we started playing it last week, and we were doing like a live recap. We only got through, I'm embarrassed to say, 7-9 minutes of it. We're going to jump back into it and do this again tonight. And then whatever we don't finish, we don't finish. And you can just post the full interview and people can go check it out for themselves.
Yeah. And because the part that we're about to play sent you into, not that I didn't have other parts that I checked out, but this part sent you into a rant. So let's play it.
Yeah.
And then you can explain why you went into a rant without going into the full rant.
I'll keep it short. Okay.
No, we know best. We're telling you what you can and cannot do.
And the beautiful part that hopefully we could come to at least somewhat of an agreement on.
Wait, I'm at the wrong spot.
And I sit there and I say, is the side of, especially the new conservative party, or the Trumpian type party, is what has caused more harm? The conservative side of saying, whether it's a religious or non-religious, of it's a matter of fact thing, or the left radical side that has taken these people with identity issues that are trying to discover themselves and say, oh, go ahead, have whatever surgery you want, cut off whatever you want, add whatever you want. And what's more harmful to the psyche of a person?
I'm trying to figure out on the telling a parent, take your child to a doctor, take your child to a therapist, ask them what is the best care for your child, and making that decision together as a family. How is that worse than some right winger saying, no, we know best. We're telling you what you can and cannot do.
And the beautiful part that hopefully we could come to at least somewhat of an agreement on is on the left. And again, I don't like getting political. It is take that child without the parent being part of it.
No, it's not.
And so at least when it comes to right and left, you could somewhat agree that at least the family has to be involved and the parents should be involved in this decision making, which is quite honestly a more right wing type. And believe me, I'm not.
Sorry, that's it for me. It is not. No, it is not a right wing thing that people on the political right love their kids and go with them to the doctor, and people on the left do not. That is utter bullshit. So that's what I ranted about last week. I'll just leave it at that.
Also what he's saying is the left will take children from their parents and go have gender surgery done on the kid. And that's just not fucking happening. That doesn't happen. God. It's bullshit.
It makes me sick.
It's absolute bullshit. And what we're seeing is that the fact is the right is much more likely to want to get into the doctor's office with you and say,
and have
no,
a say
you can't do that.
It.
No, you can't do that. No, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Than the left is. It's just so,
It's so dumb. Paul W. says that's the dumbest thing I've heard today. That made me laugh. And I'll tell you this, like, this is a humble pie, embarrassing, or like, just, I don't know. It's like moment for me. I was a Republican mayor of a major city in California and in the US. And I can tell you right now, when I started as mayor, I was conditioned to think that people on the right were better parents, better families, and like love their kids more. And I was confronted with my own ignorance and arrogance and disgustingness that is in office, when I started to interact more with members of the public and people who were not from my bubble, and I was confronted with it early on of like, oh my God, you've got this all wrong. Just stop it. And it was very subtle in the back of my mind, like bias that I didn't know I had. And then when it was confronted, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe I've carried that. And so, yeah, oof, that's a real trigger for me.
And nobody right now is doing more to say, we know better than your doctor does. We know better than your psychiatrist does. And like all the time, people are saying on social media to me, like being trans is a mental illness. And I say, no, that's not what science says. No, that's not what psychiatrists say. And they're like, no, it is. And it's like, well, what are you basing that belief on? That, and I love the meme on social media that's like, how unbelievably arrogant do you have to be to say you know better than scientists who have studied these things for decades, and it's just so true. So true.
All right. So that was last week's rant. Let's keep going. We're going to get through a little more of this interview this week.
I'm going to pigeonhole you and try to make you a Republican, for God's sakes.
Yeah, not happening.
But at least you do, and I see from just your conversation that you may not have some of the beliefs of many of the radicals on the left side, but you at least know that
I do just want to point out as I stop it here, like it's always like the radicals on the left that, there's always that little push of kind of everything he says has that little tinge of, oh, the left are the radicals. And, and every once in a while he throws me the little compliment of, oh, you're not like those radicals, and
right.
It's just, yeah.
Right.
Like I said, we're coming from a different planet.
And to be very intellectually honest, people on the left can do it to people on the right too, right? Like it feels so stinging right now because of the hypocrisy on the right.
Family should be involved in this discussion. It should be a family discussion.
Yeah, of course. And I don't rail necessarily. What I'm doing is a little bit of a caricature.
Again, let me just jump in for what's that. Like you can hear, like the wheels are turning in my head, going like, "Holy fuck! How do I even get us back to like a normal human conversation in this when we're so like, far away?"
I can hear like it's like your vocal cords are like stretched so tight. You're like, it's like, yeah.
Caricature online, and I'm going against a caricature. One of my taglines is "Thinking is not a sin." I'm trying to get people to think. I think the dumbest thing I've ever heard somebody running for office say, and I won't tell you who said it, I'll let you figure it out for yourself. Little Johnny goes to school, a boy comes home, a girl. Dumbest thing ever said. That person should have been disqualified from running for office right at that point, because that does not happen.
Go look that up, Marcella. I think I know who it is too. So,
wait, who actually said that?
Donald Trump said that.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if
on multiple occasions.
I didn't know if he started that or if he just parroted it from somebody else. So, okay.
I don't know if he did parrot it from somebody, but he said it on more than one occasion. And,
okay.
And I've had people on social media say that it's true, just as they've said there are kitty litters in classrooms around the country that kids go to the bathroom in, which has never happened ever in any school ever.
Oh God, I can't with that. Okay, let's keep going.
We'll be right back with Paul Swearingen right after this. This is the Mark Capitan Show on KMJ.
Okay. I think I cut out the break. I hope so.
My guest for today, his book, we're on with Paul Swearingen, talking about a transition in life that he's going through. And he has a book called Religious Right, Religiously Wrong. And obviously talking about the religious right. And we wanted to get into it because Paul was your sportscaster, the friendly face on KC24. The face is not quite the same face. It is maybe prettier. I love the hair.
But longer, and I've always been blessed with good hair.
You've been blessed with good hair, so have I, buddy.
As have you. Yes, I love your hair too.
And quite frankly, folks, we're talking about his transitioning to what he may not know. In fact, you have a quote basically, am I gay, am I weird, or am I a little bit of both? And so you're really still in the midst of struggling as to what may be going on.
Yeah, I mean, this is very new, and I'm actually, in the work I do in life coaching, I'm finding this with a lot of Gen X men, that there was never a language or an understanding of, something's weird about me. Somehow I don't, and I know weird is kind of a negative word, but I call myself wonderfully weird, because something's unusual about me, but there's no language, and I feel like probably for me it was like I have some demon in me or something, and so I'm just going to go to hell one day.
And that comes from what you've explained as a extremely religious pastor of a father. You sound like a typical priest kid, by the way, or PK as we used to call him back in the day, right? PKs, right? Extremely religious father and I noticed that a lot of your vitriol and bent against the religious right is based on the fact that your dad was very big, I guess, in the moral majority movement back in the early 80s.
Yeah, he was. We were in a denomination of evangelical Christianity called the Assemblies of God, and he was. He was a muckety muck in the Assemblies of God, and they're, the moral majority, they were very much ensconced in it. And
still around?
Oh yeah,
Dad.
My dad. Yeah. No, my dad passed away a couple of years ago now.
Okay. And mom?
She's still around.
So you explain in your public. I'm not outing anything that is not already public on his podcast. You explain not only a very ultra religious, but also a very abusive father.
Yeah.
Will mom agree with that?
No, but that's not uncommon. And
let me just pause right there and just ask, were you comfortable with him asking you about that? I mean, do you feel like you've put so much of this out on social media that it was fair game, or did you feel like that was an inappropriate line of questioning?
I think probably we should have had that
That's what it feels
discussion
like to
ahead
me.
of time.
Yeah.
And you can tell my answers got pretty short.
Yeah.
Short there. So maybe not inappropriate per se, but I don't think I haven't spent a lot of time on that stuff on social media. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
So,
right.
It was, and I think there is a point where he says something and I say, I don't talk about that publicly. So yeah. And also Alex in the chat here says your vitriol. Yeah, I noticed that too. Your vitriol rather than like your critique or your, something. Yes, I caught that too, Alex.
Yeah, I think this was the point in the interview when I started feeling on your behalf. Like that crosses the line. Like, aren't we like at the point in society where we say things like, "Hey, trigger alert. I'm going to ask you about some things," and maybe if you hadn't talked to you about it before, like on the air, I'd like to ask you about this. Are you comfortable with that? And you could have said, no, I'm sorry, that's not something I have talked about publicly.
And he had said, before we went on the air, and I think maybe even when we were in another break, he's like, if you want to cut anything, let me know.
Okay. All right. So maybe
that's, that's tough. And I think you're right. I think he should have said, he could even say like, now I've heard this in your social media, so I'm assuming this is okay, but you tell me if it's not. I want to ask you, and you have the right to say, don't ask. And then gone from there. I would have been more comfortable, but yeah, I think I was just listening to myself there, and I'm like, oh boy, I really shrank back right there, didn't I? So
well,
no.
But also that was
there's just that moment of like, what is my family going to say if they hear this? You're just, and it shouldn't matter, but yeah, you still kind of were like, yeesh. All right. Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think I mean, I think you communicated like, I'm closed for business on that topic. Like, you're
Yeah.
like, no, like, move on. So, anyway, but that I will just say as a like person who cares for you and loves you, and I heard that I was like, you fucking asshole. I'm gonna fucking beat your head in, except for I don't believe in violence. So I'm just gonna curse online about you.
It reminds me of the time I was driving the car and our son Sam, probably 8 or 9 years old, was in the back seat, and one of the KMJ guys had KMJ on.
This radio station that we're talking about that you're
Yeah,
on.
the right wing, and Ashley was mayor of our city at the time, and one of the hosts was, talking negatively about Ashley as mayor, and all of a sudden I hear the little voice from the back seat say, "Is he talking about mom?" And I'm like, "Yeah, son, he is." And that's part of the job. He's like, "I'm going to jump right through that radio and punch him in the mouth."
So sweet little Sam.
Yeah, he was
Oh,
not
so
happy.
sweet. No,
Not happy.
well, it's a blood sport, local politics. Okay, let's see if we can get through another little segment. Here we go.
What dissociative identity disorder is, our minds are so brilliant, and it's my therapist tells me all the time, you're not broken. Your brain worked exactly the way it is supposed to work. As a child, you don't have any way to process the trauma that's happening to you, and so it cordons it off, and a part of your brain holds it. And so I never knew this till a few years ago. I'm watching this show, and it says, here's some attributes of a trauma survivor, an adult survivor of childhood, particular type of trauma. And I'm like, well, I'm all those, but I haven't suffered this trauma. And so I went and saw my therapist that week and told him this. And he's like, oh yeah. He says, literally, he like looks at the wall and then he's like, okay, I never do this. But he said, I knew this the first day you walked in the door.
Okay. So the problem that I have with that.
So now he's going to try to convince me that I am broken and that it's really wrong that people are telling me I'm not broken.
And I don't mean a problem with your thoughts on it, but the doctors are so accommodating these days to the emotional feelings of a person. I think there's two emotional feelings that you go through.
Stop there. How dare they? How dare they be accommodating? What horrible people those doctors are.
This
the
is
emotional
where
feeling that you're going through with all the.
Sorry.
Every person who has any, exposure to mental health, trauma, like any sort of practitioner or professional in that space is listening to this going like, oh my God, like, why is this person, and so, who is the person that like inserts themselves as like, okay, now I'm the expert with an opinion on this. And, it's just weird. It's just a little bit weird.
I think it's the trauma, and trust me, females and, AFABs, you have a lot of shit to deal with in our society. Trust me. But the males, the curse of being male in America is stop that shit, keep it down. Don't show any emotion. And so somebody like this, I think probably what is coming here is like, well, why do you get to be accommodated for your emotional shit? Why don't you just have to stuff it and be a big boy like me? I think that's kind of the American male.
Yeah. I also
process.
too, I feel like, honestly, I don't know this person very well, but I know him a little bit, but I feel like he's kind of being faux. I think he's trying to make himself like, he's like trying to grab onto all the arguments that he hears in his world about, anti-LGBTQ, anti-mental health, whatever it is. And he's like, I'm just lining those up and I'm saying the things I've heard other people say. I don't even know that he feels this way,
Maybe. All right, here we go.
Trauma that you've had in the past, and the trying to understand what's going on inside the head, and then the emotional feeling of a doctor telling you whether you're broken or not. And they're so intent of saying that a person's not broken to make them feel like there's nothing wrong with them. But the issue is, emotionally, is it fair to say that there's something wrong, that it may have occurred from the abusive father and your disassociative, your disassociation that has created this multiple dissociative disorder thing, but it is nonetheless a psychological, and I know you hate the word disorder, but it's nonetheless a psychological state of being that if you didn't go through that trauma, you wouldn't have. So why not say, yes, there is something wrong that I have to deal with and that I need therapy? And with that same breath, is it the type of therapy that should help me understand what is going wrong and try to fix that, instead of going to these extremes that we see nowadays of transsexualism, where they're going through surgical procedures and stuff like that?
Well, that is, if you're saying that a transition is directly tied to the trauma, which is, that's not scientifically true.
Yeah. So you don't think that your transition is based on this dissociation?
I don't.
That whatever your father may have done, or whatever that trigger, can you identify what that trigger was?
What trigger of what?
Can you identify what act or event occurred that may have caused a dissociative disorder, or series of acts that it was?
Stop right here. I think I am trying to determine here just a little bit, like, should I be pissed right now?
Yeah.
should I be offended? And I'm trying to just tell myself, like, stay. Now I can't think of the word. What's the word?
Differentiated.
Stay differentiated. Stay differentiated. Stay
Yes.
differentiated.
Last week's word of the week was differentiation, and you're doing it again this week. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Is it just purely abuse?
Oh, I'm very aware of what it was.
Okay, and I don't want you to have to say it.
Those aren't things I disclose in public.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, but I'm assuming it's a common thing. Is it part of it? I'm assuming is based on the fact that whatever your father saw in you, he didn't feel was religiously acceptable according to the way he defined religion.
Yeah. I think that you said that very well, and that's very thoughtful of you to think. So the way I see it is, and I've worked through this a lot, there was a child that existed, and that child was super sweet and super empathetic and cried a lot. And, and it had impacts on my parents in different ways, because they had their own struggles.
She was not protective of you, though, when he started acting out regarding that?
She couldn't be. She had no power in the household. And he's a pastor. He's seen as God in this church that we have, and he is the breadwinner of the house. So everything that we did in our house was to protect Dad from anything that happened inside the household ever getting out.
Let me ask you this. World. Because it is a dramatic change that you're going through. At some point, and here's the simplistic thing that I was talking about, Marcella. See,
I'm a nuanced guy, so that's where we struggle together a little bit.
But the simplistic side of me says, myself, if I'm you, my dad was up. Bleep that out, by the way, Marcella.
Oh, we don't get to cuss on the show. Darn.
No, you could cuss. We have to bleep it out.
Oh, okay, cool.
Have you gotten to the point to where you could just say, my dad was up, and I'm okay with it because I don't want to be up myself, and I don't need to go through these machinations. I could just say, he was wrong, I was right, or I was what I was, and that's all there is to it.
It's funny. I just did a video today that's what the Christianity I grew up in told us to do. Just go to the cross and pray, and it'll all be good. Just choose joy. I want to be healthy. I don't want to act like everything's okay. So I'm walking through. Okay, bleep this out. Get ready. I'm walking through the because I want to live a real life. So I was this person. I became this mask.
Yeah.
Paul Swearingen, that lived from the age of 6 until 57, was a fake. So I could survive.
Okay.
And now I'm trying to become the real person that lived before.
And we're going to talk more about the real Paul Swearingen right after this. This is the Mark Capitan Show on KMJ.
Love to all of you in the live stream chat here who are jumping
Yeah.
up to defend me. And Pucky, I'm sorry, this is anxiety producing. I totally get it. I feel like I ended strong, so I hope that helped all of you.
Well, and I was gonna share the same as I was listening. Thinking this is the third time I've listened through. The first 2 times, like I was definitely, I had to like break it up in pieces, and like it was very hard to listen because, um, yeah, I mean, you just didn't know which way this was gonna go, and like, oh, I could hear you trying to sort of like receive and maneuver. And he was a little more like, I want to get these points, I want to say these things. And he's like figuring out how to like craft it into a question. So it felt, if it felt very agendized, and not like curious and like, let's make room and help me because I don't really understand, like I don't know. It was stressful.
It's what I've thought a lot about. I would really love to go into right-wing media territory and have these conversations, because I think a lot of people they never hear another viewpoint. They believe that what they're saying is true because they don't know anybody that says anything different. And they think MSNBC and Rachel Maddow are the only people that ever say anything different, and they're just getting propaganda points. And so my goal was just like to sound sane and say something different than what they've heard. And so I'm just trying to like, dude, this is ridiculous. Like just let's kind of tell the story here rather than trying to. But I also think at the same time it's good. Like let's hear where you're coming from and let me try to unravel it. But we only have, I think, 38 minutes of content to chat. And so I think that's a big part of why my mind was struggling, because I'm like, holy shit, I can't believe we're here. And how do I possibly get us to someplace normal in this short period of time?
Yeah. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Well, okay, but you would say net positive experience, like you're net positive, glad you did it.
Yeah, very much. And I think if we were to listen to more, and I'll put the link into the show notes and things, I think people would be happy, because I did push back, and I think I got a little more aggressive pushing back as the show went along, and I was getting a feel for where we are. And I got to say things like, I love Jesus. I love the Bible. It's just Christians I don't like, and some things like that. And we talked about trans athletes in sports. And I got to give some perspective on that. He was, I'm a science guy and I really like science. And I kind of got to push back on that. So I think it went really well. I felt really good. And I've had friends who have listened to, as well as you, and have come back with like, some have been like, hey, I think he was really trying to be kind.
Well, that's what I said. You probably heard that from your wife. Like I can tell.
I heard it from you and Bryce Yoakum. Yeah.
Bryce Yoakum. Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. All right. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. And then I heard from other people like, I effing hate that guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Like some of the folks have said in the live chat here.
Yeah.
And just like what an asshole. And I was told by the producer that they got very positive feedback from the show. And then I was a little bit like, oh, if I didn't get any negative feedback from a KMJ audience,
you didn't break
maybe
enough.
I didn't do my job. I may have been too nice. So
no, I think I think in the moment you played it, like what came out of you? Because I actually don't think you gamed this. You didn't know. You walk in, you're like, what? And so then just what comes out of you, I think was a really beautiful display of like who you actually are in all of this. And I was very proud of you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Cause I think, as he's trying to say, why don't you just buckle up, young man, and be the man you're supposed to be?
Yeah.
I felt good to say, well, no, that's a facade that so
Right.
many males are required to put on. And why would I do that? Like, what's the point? Or
And by the way, which is the harder assignment in life? Which
yeah,
requires more courage and actual fortitude and backbone and commitment and face like flint? Which to do the hard thing and to know that when you walk into the room, everyone's looking at you and thinking you're weird, and walk into a KMJ audience and say like, no, this is really who I am. The mask is off. Is that harder or easier than like, the doing the dude thing if that's not who you are?
yeah.
It's much more difficult and much more courageous to do what you're doing.
Much more difficult, but also I think doing the bro thing as a cover
Yeah,
for pain inside is a really difficult thing.
that's interesting.
I think you may not uh you may not get as much outward
Mm,
pressure overtly, but
mm.
inside you're terrified all the time.
Ooh,
What if they
that's a
find out? What if they find
yeah.
out? What if they find out, And a
Well,
lot of
and
times you don't even know what you're afraid they're going to find out, but like
you're just
somehow
not measuring
I'm
up.
not making the
Yeah,
grade with the rest of these guys. And you don't know that none of them think they're making the grade either. But because
yeah.
of our society, just fake it, just fake it, just fake it.
Well, and Paul W says in the chat, he was nicer than Mark Driscoll, but believes the same things. And that just sent a chill down my spine. Like I imagine, and I especially, imagine the Mark Driscoll stuff in Seattle. And like, I imagine the sort of hipster young man who is in that surrounding and like feels this pressure to become this thing and like, and yeah, that's really stressful. It's not different than um, the pressure that women have felt for all of time, but let's just say in our lifetime and in Western society to be like the best, like Christian Sunday school mom, or like to, be, like just, you know, all the stuff we went through when you're like, I'm going to pastor. I'm like, okay, but I can't do like pastor's wife thing. And just feeling like the expectation of you're at everything, you're always smiling, you're always nice, you can never have a bad day, your casserole's better than everybody's, your kids are always better behaved, like that. I know it's a stereotype we talk about, and I think people think like, oh, no one really feels that way because we all know it's now a stereotype. No, it's real. It's real.
Yeah,
It's very, very, very destructive and damaging to people.
very much. And in coaching, I stole a metaphor from somebody we know of life is messy. If you choose life, it's messy, and you can choose a path in life that's clean. But nurseries are messy, cemeteries are clean and neat. One of them has life, and one of them doesn't. So if you choose life, there's going to be mess. And what this host is saying, well, why don't you just choose this less messy path? And I'm like, because there's no life there. Like that's choosing death. That's choosing to live
Yeah.
not a full life. And I heard a podcast where a panel was arguing, do we need a religious revival in America? And they're working off this premise that I hear over and over and over again of like, we have a crisis of depression and suicide and all of these things in America, which I think, and everybody on the panel is like, yes, we do. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And I think you can make a case for that. And I can understand why everybody nods their head. again, I think some of it is just we've chosen to live in the mess, where in the past we were told, stuff it,
Right.
stuff it, stuff it,
That's right.
stuff it. Some of it is
That's
we're
right.
just wearing our mess outside now. But also, then they argue, oh, you atheist, you told us, getting rid of Christianity was going to make America better. And we've gone from 95% Christian in America to 68%. And look at what happened. Now everybody's depressed and suicidal, as if like that's some horrific change. We still are this huge majority of Christians. And what I think nobody ever says, and what kind of where I'd like to get in that space sometime, is to say, maybe it's not a religious revival we need. Maybe it's the fucking power brokers from the religious side and the political side to say, we lied to you. I think maybe the people on the other side aren't feeling a lack of purpose and religion as we're being told, or any of those things. What they're feeling is, you told us if we lived this way and we did these things and we worked hard and we went to college and we did these things, this is what life would be like. And you fucking lied to us. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe the fucking Christians, instead of trying to take over government and instill Project 2025, need to admit, yeah, maybe we don't know everything we're talking about. And part of the reason it all turned out to be a lie is because the boomers are still like, no, we want to hoard everything till the day we die, or whatever that is. But just admit, yeah, our theology's a little bit dissonant.
Okay.
And, those types of things.
Well, so.
And American exceptionalism and the American dream, maybe it wasn't a complete lie, but it certainly hasn't worked out for the younger generations the way they were told.
Maybe it's not, and that's kind of like I don't know, like a social or cultural thing. I would, like, maybe we need to acknowledge that the Christianity that's expressed in the political religious context is not actually what is like Jesus, like sort of plain Maine, like just the cultural, like kind of like maybe can acknowledge we've distorted that. And that would be nice, right?
Yeah.
Like that would be really nice. I think this guy, getting back to this interview, is I think he's basically trying to say, like, hey, if your non-genderedness is a result of, trauma that you experienced, why, like, are you not creating more trauma for yourself by like living it out and accommodating your parts and your non-genderedness? Are you making it worse for yourself? And I have to tell you, like, that's kind of, I can understand that question, right? Like I've wrestled with that. I've had to work to understand what is all this and what is happening. And so it could be like, all right, yeah, it's a good question. But what if being non-gendered, or trans or whatever is actually who I really am, and not just the result of trauma, or isn't the result of trauma? Like, what if that's true? What you gonna do now? What if that's true? Like, can we sit for a second and just like create some awareness of like, yeah, maybe this is actually just true for some people. And then, and
I don't get what you're
can that
saying.
just be,
Are you saying some people should not pursue full
No.
self and full life?
no, I'm saying like, it's almost like people can handle your you-ness right now if it is the trauma. Like, oh, okay, well then it's mental health, and therefore it's okay that Paul's got his nails painted and is wearing earrings and looks like a rock star. Like, I can handle that. But like, you're kind of like, well, I don't know that that's exactly what, maybe this was me before I was traumatized, and the trauma was to cover up for that.
Right.
What if that is true?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that can just be what it is.
Well, it's like later in the podcast, we had the discussion about pronouns, and I'm like, what harm is it to you? What I literally said to him, like, I thought you thought I see one of my fans is here from Facebook. That's awesome. Here in the live stream, I just kept asking him, like, what harm is there to you for somebody to have a different pronoun than you think they should have? What I thought liberals were supposed to be the snowflakes. It sounds to me like you're the snowflake. Like, what harm is there to you? And yes, what they don't get is the courage. Like I've talked before about one of my clients in life coaching who said, everybody told me if I left the church, my life would be a mess. And I left the church and my life is a mess. They were right. And we talked about it, and it's like, okay, why is your life a mess? Well, there's this cozy cocoon of comfort in living in that little horde of a sectarian community. I have all the answers. I'm right and everyone else is wrong. I'm in the in group and everybody else is out. There is a comfort in that. There's no question. And all of a sudden, everything's black and white. If I need an answer, somebody's going to give me an answer. And yeah, all I have to do is give up all my freedom, all my ability to think, all my ability to learn and grow, all my autonomy. And so you just decide, is that worth it? Sorry. Talk amongst yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. And I'm appreciating the comments that are coming on the live chat that, like, sometimes it's just as simple. Like, I have a different way of living, or this is just it's a different person. Like, why is that not okay? Anyway, you know what? I'm actually thinking too, also, because you're like choking off the show right
I'm
now.
choking to death. Yes.
I think it's probably time to wrap, is what I'm thinking. That's called a hard landing. You know, anyway, we're gonna wrap up this chapter of our lives where you appeared on the Game J, the Mark Capitan show. We have processed it as a couple. We have talked about it with our dear friends here for 2 weeks in a row on the Ish podcast. And I think we're grateful. You're grateful. I'm grateful
Yeah.
that you had that moment and that you had that conversation, and we'll see where it goes from here.
And I really appreciate people holding space with me here for it
Yeah.
and coming to my defense. I love it.
Yeah, that's really generous, and we feel that love. So anyway, do you have the vocal capacity to land on what's on your mind or not?
Yeah, I think I do. I kind of already told mine, but I may be able to come up with another one if you go first.
Okay, I'll go first. Mine is actually a little bit I don't know, like, okay, so I'm driving home from work today, and I just thought, I want to just share this on what's on my mind. So we live in the middle of California. If you think of, like, quite literally the belly button of the state, the exact north, south, east, west middle of California is about 40 miles northeast of us. So, it's just right in the middle. And we're in this great big bowl. We are surrounded by the Sierra Nevadas. And I'm telling you, I know I say this like every spring, but it is truly today. Today is the day. March, what is the date? March 19th, 2025 is the most beautiful day in Fresno, California that I have seen since living here since 1987. The sun was hitting the Sierra Nevadas such that the snow was so illuminated. And then there was this contrast with, like, the gray granite shadows and the green foothills leading up to it. And I felt like somebody had taken this enormous mountain range and pulled it 60 miles closer. And it felt like I was in Salt Lake City or Colorado Springs. These mountains are right here. And there's something happening. I don't know if this is like a middle-aged thing, because I'm noticing this among my colleagues and peers. I think people are being drawn to natural beauty right now. And there's something very spiritual and profound about that. There's something happening with this spiritual, mental natural beauty, all kind of interweaving. And I'm just going to leave it at that. And I about drove off the road, and that's what's on my mind is what a gorgeous place I live in, and how we got to take care of this stuff because it feeds the soul.
And maybe there's a post-COVID element to that too, that we were kind of stuck inside for a long time. I like Pucky's idea. We'll have to think about this.
Let's do it.
In the live chat, Pucky says, ask watchers, listeners, what's on their mind and display the comments. Yeah, I like that. Maybe we, dedicate the last 25 minutes of a show sometime to that, or 15 or so. Unless you want to do that right now. Is that what you're saying?
Do it. Let's do it. People
All right,
can
if you
just
want
throw it in there.
You want to throw in the chat what's on your mind?
What's
be
on
great.
your minds while you share yours, Paul?
Yeah, I'll go to a different one than what I had before, because what was on my mind was that discussion about Christian revival and all. Have I talked about? Do you know what the Dunning-Kruger effect is?
You mentioned it, and then I forgot. You told me, and I forgot.
I just find this really fascinating, and I was reading some about it yesterday again. The Dunning-Kruger effect is a study, and it actually came out of the scientists seeing this story about a man who was helping his small child with a project of invisible ink. And they used this invisible ink where, like, you did it with like a lemon or something. I did one of these when I was a kid, and you could like make, write something in invisible ink, and then like you used a lemon and a candle and you could make the writing appear. And so this guy tried to use the same process to make himself invisible, and went and robbed a bank. And when he was arrested by the police, he was stunned that they were able to see him in the cameras at the bank, because he's like, I did the thing, aren't I invisible? And so the scientists, one named Dunning and one named Kruger, began to study, like, how could a guy think this? And what they found is, when you ask people their confidence in what they know about a subject, the less they know about the subject, the more confident they are in their knowledge on the subject.
Yeah.
And so there is, as the people who are watching here can see, I'm holding my hand up, as they begin to learn more about the subject, their confidence begins to go down in their true knowledge about the subject until it craters. And then when they really begin to build their expertise, like working on a master's or something, their confidence in their knowledge begins to go back up again. But even that will not generally get as high as the purely ignorant person is confident in what they know. And, thus a lot of people use this today to talk about MAGA and the highly sort of media influenced person as being the one who is most confident. And there was a debate between Bill Nye, the science guy, and, I can't think of the guy now, who is the big Answers in Genesis, Noah's Ark Museum guy. And they had an argument about whether the Noah's Ark story is a real historical event or not. And at the end, they basically asked Bill Nye, the science guy, like, what, Ken Ham, that's it, Pucky, good job, Ken Ham. They asked Bill Nye, what would it take for you to no longer believe in evolution? And Bill Nye said, that's really easy. There would just have to be one evidence in the, metastructure of fossils that was out of order and showed us we got it wrong, and it would burst everything. It would be very easy to overturn my belief in the theory of evolution. And then they asked Ken Ham, what would make you a believer in evolution and no longer a creationist? And Ken Ham said, nothing. There is nothing you could say that would change my belief. After the argument was over, the debate was over, they asked the audience who won the debate, And overwhelmingly, people said Ken Ham won the debate because he was so certain
Yeah. He's
about
so
his
confident.
answer.
Yeah.
So confident. And that's the Dunning-Kruger effect. So if
Yeah.
sometime maybe it was like this interview, he was so confident about what he was asking because the Dunning-Kruger effect gives people an unreal confidence about what they know.
Yeah. Well, boys and girls, we have talked about, we had a determination as our word of the week last week, and now the Dunning-Kruger effect this week.
Yes.
So we
Yeah,
have
go read
gone
on
to
it
school.
sometime. It's really a fascinating thing, and you start to say, oh yeah, and when somebody's on there and they're like telling you the things they know, and you're like, how in the world can this person believe this? You just go, Dunning-Kruger effect.
Dunning-Kruger. Hey, speaking of Dunning, we be dunning with this show.
Look at that. That's a transition right there.
'Cause I'd be hungry.
All right.
Gotta
Good
eat
night,
dinner.
everybody. We love you all.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.